It all began on a muted Thursday evening, the kind where the sky droops low with dense grey clouds, and everything around you feels like it's weighed down. I came home after work, juggling 2 grocery bags, ready to cook dinner like I always did. That was my way of contributing ever since I moved back in, trying to stash away enough money to finally afford my own place. But the second I walked through the front door, I sensed something was wrong. My mother sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a glass of wine, while my father stood behind her with his arms folded tightly across his chest. And there, sprawled out on the couch like royalty on his throne, was my younger brother, Ethan. He didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. But my mother did. "Kayla," she said, her voice already laced with that familiar tone of disappointment. "We need to talk." I set the bags down carefully. "Is everything all right?" My father's jaw clenched as he spoke. "Your brother's under a lot of pressure. He needs a quiet environment. It's hard for him to concentrate on his startup with constant distractions." "Distractions?" I echoed. "Are you saying I'm the distraction?" Ethan finally looked up and gave a half smirk. "Hard to get into the zone with all your noise and mess." "My mess?" I said, stunned. I lived in the smallest room in the house. I paid rent. I cooked, I cleaned, I even fixed Dad's computer when it froze on his spreadsheets. I worked 2 jobs just to save up. I was barely home, just enough to sleep. "What noise?" I asked, my voice beginning to shake. Mom cut in. "We've decided it's time. You've stayed long enough. This isn't forever, you just need to give Ethan some breathing space." Breathing space. That word stung. He had the entire downstairs level to himself. I slept next to the laundry machines in a room that felt like a storage closet. This wasn't a discussion. It was a decision already made. "So you're asking me to leave," I said, "so he can be more comfortable." Dad gave a weak shrug. "It's what's best for everyone." But it wasn't for everyone. It was for him. Just like always. Ethan, the golden boy, the baby of the family, the future CEO, who dropped out of college and bounced from one doomed business idea to the next, was once again the chosen one. And me? I'd graduated with honors, worked 60-hour weeks, and somehow I was still the problem. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded, picked up my bags, and walked out. No hugs. No goodbyes. Just silence. That night, I slept in my car behind the diner where I worked on weekends. Rain tapped against the windshield, soaking through my coat. The next morning, I showed up to work still damp from the storm, too tired to think, but too angry to stop. I had no plan. Just fury. And that fury became fuel. For the next 3 months, I crashed on couches, worked double shifts, and occasionally slept in the back room at work. Every paycheck I earned, every tip I collected, I kept. I saved. I endured. And eventually, I landed a temporary job at a financial tech company. Strange, really, considering what would happen next. There, I met Sarah, a quiet, brilliant woman in accounting, who had her own scars from a family that failed her. We connected quickly. She taught me things I never imagined: how credit worked, how to read the digital footprints people left behind, how financial access really functioned in the background. One late night, eating greasy takeout together at her desk, I finally opened up about what happened with my family. She listened intently. Then she leaned in and said, "If they ever linked any of their cards or accounts to your name, you might still have access." I laughed at first. It sounded absurd. But then I remembered, back in college, my dad had added me as a secondary cardholder for emergencies. I hadn't touched that account in years. Still, curiosity won out. That night, I logged in. And there it was. My parents' travel credit card. Still listing my name under the authorized users panel. That's when it hit me, not revenge. Not spite. Something colder. Sharper. Justice. They pushed me out so Ethan could have air to breathe. Let's see what happens when their world forgets how to inhale. The chill I felt when I left their house that night never really faded. It clung to me like betrayal. I moved into a tiny apartment, bare walls, almost no furniture. I lived on canned soup and patchy freelance design gigs that barely paid the rent. But it was mine. My space. My peace. And I had time. Time to reflect. Time to go back and relive every word, every look, every moment that led to my own parents telling me, without shame, that I needed to go. That my brother needed space. As if I were nothing but a piece of furniture in their way. But what they forgot, what they never even considered, was that I was never just quiet. I was capable. It was me who digitized their estate documents. I set up their entire financial infrastructure. I created their emergency fund. I linked their backup cards. I was the one who managed their online banking portals. I even had full account access 2 years ago, when they begged me to fix their taxes and save them from penalties. And they never changed the passwords. Why would they? I was the dependable one. The obedient daughter. The invisible helper. So when I discovered, a week later, that they had dipped into my personal emergency savings, the $15,000 I had secretly stored in a separate account under their umbrella trust, I didn't yell. Yes, the money I had worked for. My safety net. Spent without a word, on a luxury vacation to Bali. For Ethan. And his girlfriend. And even then, I didn't scream. I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I opened their banking dashboard, disabled their credit lines, disconnected the backup funds, and halted every automatic payment they'd set up. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, it was a quiet detonation. At first, Ethan assumed there was a technical issue. Then came the flurry of missed calls. 3 times in under 2 hours, my parents tried to reach me. I let each ring pass unanswered. Their texts grew increasingly frantic. "Sweetheart, we think someone's hacked into our account. Please help us fix this, your dad is on the phone with the bank. This is urgent, we're stuck at the airport." And that's when it unraveled. They had tried to upgrade Ethan's flight to business class, part of a surprise honeymoon gift. The card was declined. Twice. In the end, he had to ask his girlfriend to pay using her student credit card. I knew that must have burned. But I wasn't finished. 3 days later, I returned to their house. I didn't knock. I walked in just like they used to barge into my room uninvited. I wore the same coat they once mocked for being unflattering, saying it made me look like I didn't care about appearances. My mother rushed over the moment she saw me, panicked, breathless. "We've been trying to reach you. The bank froze all our accounts, we can't even pay for the hotel." I raised my hand to stop her. "You spent my emergency fund," I said plainly. "Money I saved, while I lived off dollar store noodles in a damp basement rental." My father opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't let him. "You never made me a priority. Not once. But I was the one who organized your accounts, the one who bailed you out when the house nearly went into foreclosure. You gambled with your finances again and again, and I kept you afloat. And how do you repay me? By kicking me out, and using my savings to reward him." Ethan stood behind them, arms folded, his usual smirk painted across his face. "Relax," he said, casually. "It was just a vacation." I didn't even flinch. "Exactly," I replied, pulling a printed bank statement from my bag and laying it flat on the kitchen island. "A vacation paid for with the money I bled for. And now you get to experience what it feels like to be left with nothing, no safety net, no quiet daughter to clean up after your mess." I turned and walked away, leaving behind frozen accounts, a stack of unpaid bills, and their golden boy sulking over his ruined, Instagram-worthy getaway. But this wasn't vengeance for the sake of cruelty. It was restitution, for every time I swallowed my words, for every milestone they skipped, for each moment they treated me as an afterthought. I was never the favorite. I was the fallback. And they were just beginning to understand what it meant to lose someone who'd always been silently holding them together. Weeks passed. Not a single message. No missed calls. Just silence. It felt familiar. I'd grown up in that silence, the kind where affection was measured in chores completed, not in warmth or embraces. Their silence had once been a punishment. Now, it felt like peace. I rebuilt myself. I moved into a sunlit studio downtown, small but full of life, paintbrushes in jars, thriving houseplants, and windows that welcomed the morning. I got promoted. Not because someone vouched for me, but because I worked for it. I delivered. And for the first time, I believed I was worthy of the good things. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in years. 8th grade science fair. The year I took first place. The year they skipped the ceremony to go to Ethan's soccer game. In the picture, I stood smiling with a blue ribbon pinned to my shirt. Alone. Tucked behind it was a single sheet of paper, with 6 handwritten words in my father's script. We were wrong. We see it now. No explanations. No pleas. Just that. And somehow, it was enough. For the first time in their lives, they seemed to grasp what they'd done, not just with money, but with decades of choosing charisma over character, flash over consistency, noise over quiet strength. I didn't call. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the beach that evening, let the waves kiss my feet, and felt something warm wrap around me, something I hadn't felt in years. Self-worth. They finally noticed me. But only after I stopped waiting for them to. That was the twist in it all. Once you stop chasing validation, people finally start seeing your value. But by then, you've already learned to live without their approval. And that's the kind of freedom no one can take from you.